Johnny Goryl has spent over 65 years in baseball as a player, coach, manager, advisor. He's done it all. I was thrilled to sit down with you last time. Thrilled to have you back. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Kestrel.
Can you explain a little bit about your role with the Indians?
Well, it all started out many years ago as a young staff guy being asked to take an organization and move forward with them back in 1989. We were trying to get a foundation for player development, which at the time was not in the best shape as it should have been. And from that time, we ended up creating some continuity within the whole organization the first few years that I was the field coordinator and also a temporary minor league director. And through them efforts and a lot of help from a lot of good people, we started moving forward with developing culture in the organization and developing a lot of young players who eventually changed the whole image of the Indians along the way. And after having about 4 100-loss seasons in the previous years, and then in the 90s, that's when everything came together, and we ended up winning a lot of ball games and winning some championships, and it was a heck of a ride at that time.
And you are a bit of a bunting expert. I know I've seen some bunting competitions out here. Can you tell me how important is a good bunt?
Well, I mean, first of all, to put that all in perspective, I mean, the bunting part of the game of baseball is no longer something that used to be a big thing back in the 50s and 60s. Today, there's more emphasis placed on big innings and 3-run home runs and such. But, the only way a bunt will ever be asked of a player to execute is that he is able to get the job done, and the manager has the confidence in that being able to happen. And it usually doesn't happen with us. We don't encourage the bunt earlier than the 5th inning. We like to see it done a little further into the game, but we also like to see it done when we have runners at first and second with nobody out rather than a runner on first, unless it's late in the game in the late innings and we're in a tie game or we need a run to tie a game up.
Absolutely, and I saw a bunch of the Hillcat players out there bunting away yesterday. I know there's been such an emphasis these days on power and flash.
Right.
But how did the guys do out there?
They did terrific. I mean, Paul Hendricks, we've had it twice this year here that I've moved in on twice. On my last interview with you was part of that thing that we had to get done here. And Paul's won it both times with a very good effort and a very good technique, and he's done it real well. I told him yesterday, now the real test is going to come when there's pressure on the line and you have to produce under pressure conditions. So we'll see how that works out later.
Yeah, a little bit of a difference from hula hoops to actual gameplay, right?
Exactly.
And like you said, this is my second time sitting down with you. I could listen to your stories all day. The guys must just flock to you in the clubhouse for your knowledge and your stories, right?
Well, I think they flock to me for different reasons. First of all, I love music. I'm a big country fan. I love Blake Shelton and a couple of the other female singers that I can't remember off the top of my head right now, but Blake always comes to mind because he's one of my favorites. And but the other thing that I like a lot is a song out there called Uptown Funk.
Oh yeah.
Uptown Funk has got to be my most favorite song of all time. And these kids, the last time I was in here, but you didn't get a chance to see that whenever we won a ball game, that Uptown Funk was played just before the game, got them ready to go out on the field, and we had them pumped up, and they get a big kick out of me because I usually get carried away a little bit and start doing a few dance moves.
Gotta get the camera in
oh my God, no. But they have a lot of fun with that, and they're a great group of kids here, and always enjoy coming into Lynchburg.
And these players are trying to make it to the majors. Can you tell me about when you got that call from the Cubs?
Oh my God, that was back in 1957. I was in the Southern League, which was a AA level at that time. I probably had the best year I ever had with the bat. I ended up hitting 301, I think it was 301, and I had 19 home runs. I played shortstop, which is a position that I was never used to playing, but I played it the whole season. I guess I did fairly well, good enough that they wanted to put me on their 40-man roster. And as a result of that, there was a call up in September to take a look at me, and you know, from that time, then I went into spring training the following year, and believe it or not, Kestrel, the batting coach, the hitting coach for the team at that time was a Hall of Famer by the name of Roger Hornsby. Can you believe that? Anyway, listening to Roger talk about hitting and taking an interest a little bit in my talent, you know. I don't know if you've seen anything that was worthwhile, but it kept me around the game for a long time.
Absolutely, and you've played with a number of Hall of Famers. Ernie Banks and Hank Aaron come to mind. Can you tell me what it's like to see those guys play every day?
Well, the best thing that I remember, I played with Hank in the minor leagues. We both were in the Northern League at Eau Claire, Wisconsin. And Hank had joined our club. He had played in the Negro League down in Mobile, Alabama, got signed by the Braves and got sent into Eau Claire. And the thing that I remember best about Hank was he wasn't an outfielder, he was a shortstop, first of all. And the other thing which was unique about Hank was he hit cross-handed, which is a very tough thing to do. And yet he ended up hitting like about 330 and led the Northern League in hitting. And then the following year he went to Jacksonville, Florida, where under got a manager there by the name of Ben Garrity, nice man, and took Hank and converted him to a conventional grip in the bat. And he ended up, well, being the all-time home run hitter in the game until Barry Bonds broke his record here.
The rest is history.
Yes, definitely, yeah.
Where was your favorite place to play?
Well, you know, Progressive Field for me was, I never played there, but I coached a lot of games there. That was a fun, I always enjoy being in Progressive Field. It's a great stadium. And my favorite place to play, probably of all the cities, was probably Yankee Stadium for one, and the Red Sox in Fenway Park, where I grew up, probably about 35 miles away from there. So those were my two favorites.
Classic venues.
Yeah, absolutely. Too bad they tore down Yankee Stadium. There was so much history there in the game that, you know, I mean, God, to think that you walked on the same field that Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig and Mickey Mantle was playing at that time when I was playing there, but to be part of that history, being able to play that stadium was pretty special.
Was it special and exciting every time you walked out there? Did that feeling ever fade?
Oh, yeah, you know, I mean, yeah, it was different. It just seemed like those guys were there, even though they weren't living, they were in that stadium. It seemed like, you know, like, I mean, it wasn't a haunting feeling, it was just a very special feeling for me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And did you always know that once your playing career was over, you wanted to stay in baseball?
Well, that kind of come about pretty early in my career as a player. I was with the Twins at the time, and I was playing in the minor leagues at my last years there at AAA, and it was getting to the point where I had to think about, I was 32 years old at the time, and at that age, at that time of anybody's career, during that time, you were looking at your playing your last years in the game. So I had a farm director by the name of George Brophy, and Mr. Brophy saw enough in me to offer me a chance to be a minor league manager, and asked me if I would be interested in it, knowing that I probably had another year or two to play yet. And I says, absolutely. I says, I want to stay in the game. So he gave me that opportunity. I ended up going to, well, I never did get to, I was going to Auburn, New York to manage in the New York Penn League, but that never happened because the manager out in Denver, Cal Ermer, he ended up going to the big leagues as the manager, and they had nobody to go in there and finish out the season for them in June, and asked me if I'd take a shot at it, which I did, and then I did well enough, they brought me back. Well, it ended up the following year, I ended up switching jobs with Billy Martin. Billy ended up replacing Cal Lerner in the off season, and then that was during the early part of the next season, and then when that happened, well, they wanted Billy to come down to the minor leagues and manage for a little while, and they took me and brought me up to the big leagues, and I became a coach up there. That's how I became a coach in the big league. So I've been very fortunate along the way. I've had a lot of good opportunities. Hopefully I took the best of most of them, and still here.
Absolutely. And you've mentored so many players over the years. Do you have a few that stand out to you?
Oh, I would just, what? Yeah, there's quite a few of them. I mean, I can't just single out a few. I mean, there's
a long list,
so many of them. But I was very proud of the way Jim Thome turned out. Jim Thome's going to be a Hall of Famer.
Absolutely.
And Manny Ramirez was another young high school kid that turned out to be a pretty good player. Fortunately, Manny got messed up with something, and he would have been a Hall of Famer as well, and may still be. But then you get kids like David Bell, who is now the bench coach for the Cardinals. Pretty special. Proud of that. And Johnny Peralta was another kid that, both those guys are 18 years old when I first got them. And, I got a message from David just 2 days ago, saying that he was working with Peralta to make a third baseman out of him because they took him from short to put him on third to make room for Diaz, a young shortstop they got from Cuba, to play every day. So David was out there working Johnny Peralta, and they happened to do a drill that I did with both of those kids when they were growing up in our system, and it was called a drop ball drill. To this day, they still do it in certain organizations. We do it occasionally now. But from doing that drill, they brought my name into their conversation, and they were talking about it and talking about me, which made me feel pretty good. And then David turned around and told Johnny he was going to give me a call and talk to me. He says, and Johnny turned around, he says, well, you tell my daddy I said hello.
So the lessons just keep moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
So did your best baseball experiences come as a player or in your post-player career in many roles?
Well, my most exciting time in my whole career was probably the '97 season when I was bench coach for Mike Hargrove, and we played the Miami Marlins in the World Series. Also was the most disappointing time because we ended up getting beaten extra innings in the 7th game that cost us the championship, World Series championship. But that was a very memorable time for me. I never thought I was ever going to be someone that's going to, teach the game to young players like I have been able to do. And I didn't know whether they'd listen to me because I certainly didn't have the name that goes with being in the game like I have all these years. But you know what? It was just an example of you don't have to be a household name to be able to be a good teacher, or to be somebody that can do something in this business. And we get a lot of young players, that showed in that respect, some attribute to be able to do that themselves.
And obviously your lessons, they listen to you. They're still using those lessons today.
I hope they do. I always like to think they do. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you mentioned it briefly before, I want to know, because I'm sure in baseball you've been in this business for over 6 decades. You've probably experienced every emotion that baseball has to offer. So I'm curious to know what comes to mind when I say 1997.
Well, it'll be the seventh game of that World Series. Just getting into the World Series and beating Baltimore. Excuse me a minute. Just beating Baltimore to get into the World Series when Tony Fernandez hit a home run in the 11th inning. We were playing in Baltimore at the time and gave us a 1-0 lead. It was scoreless up until that point. It was one of the best games I ever was involved in, and a lot of memories out of that game. One of them was that we ran a bunt defense, unbeknownst to me or Mike Hargrove, that Matt Williams and Omar Vizquel put together themselves, and Baltimore had runners at first and second in the bottom of the 7th inning, and Roberto Alomar was the hitter, pretty good hitter in his day, Hall of Famer as well, and we were kind of skeptical about Roberto bunting in that situation, but he showed bunt on the first pitch, and he took it for a ball. So we didn't do nothing. We just figured that, we had him in a bunt. In case he did bunt, we were going to be able to cover the play. But Matt and Omar on their own ran what they call a wheel play, where everybody was moving on the infield and expecting Roberto to bunt, and he did. He laid the most perfect bunt. You couldn't roll it out there any better. And he laid it down there so good that Matt Williams, who broke in on the pitch, fielded the ball, and Omar was breaking to third base, got to third base, and Matt threw the ball to Omar for the force for the runner at third. One pitch later, there was a ground ball. We turned a double play, and we were in the dugout. We should have lost that game by all stretch of the imagination, but we didn't, and that was in the 6th game of that championship series.
I imagine 1997, that postseason, you must have just felt every emotion.
Well,
from excitement to disappointment.
Yeah, it was. I'm going to tell you, during that fall of that year, the Indians Public Relations Department took the video and made a video of our series with the Baltimore, all the playoff games leading up to the World Series. Then they did every 7 games of the World Series on a video, and they sent it to every one of us. To this day, it's still wrapped in cellophane. I haven't opened it. I won't look at it. Maybe one day I will, but right now I don't even want to look at it.
No need to revisit that.
Yeah, you're right.
I appreciate you joining me so much. It's been an honor to sit and listen to your stories. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Crystal.